Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome back. We're in the first quarter of 2023, and I told you we're going to find people that can help you grow your business and that you can take action on. And today's guest, I know, will help us in that area because we all have challenges in sales. But the thing is, what are we doing to increase our sales? So Jeremy, will you share with our listeners today, problem will you help small business and entrepreneurs solve today?
Well, typically, companies come to us, whether they're SMB all the way to Fortune 500 or whoever they are, right? And they come to us because they're concerned about losing sales to low-cost competitors. Does that ever happen to anybody on here watching that? They're worried that their salespeople are inconsistent. So it's hard for them to scale the business when 1 month they're up, the next month they're down. It's like a roller coaster. And the third thing is they typically come to us because they're frustrated by losing salespeople and their attrition and having to spend the money on continually rehiring, retraining, and going through that attrition part as well. So typically those are the three things that companies come to us that we solve for them, whether they're small, tiny pizza shop to, our biggest client is a search engine that rhymes with Fugle.
There you go. Well, today's guest is Jeremy Miner. He has a 17-year sales career. Jeremy was recognized in the direct selling industry as the 45th highest earning producer out of more than 108 million salespeople. Jeremy's earnings as a commission-only salesperson win a multiple seven figures every year. Jeremy's particular brand of sales training pioneers the unique use of behavior science and human psychology within the sales process. He is a contributor for Inc. magazine and has been featured in Forbes, USA Today, Entrepreneur magazine, the Wall Street Journal, and a host of other publications on the topic of sales. Let's welcome Jeremy to the podcast today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for being on your show. It's an honor. Now, I want to clarify something. There wasn't 108 million salespeople in the company I sold for. That's just overall in the direct selling association like that. The industry, which is pretty much every type of sales industry you can find. I was ranked number 45 in earnings out of 108 million salespeople selling anything worldwide. But they gave me all the good leads. It was all luck.
Yeah, that's right.
They gave me the pink leads.
Well, we just want a few of those strategies today because I know my business owners and entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast, sales is always a challenge, but it becomes one of the areas for some people, they really dig into it. And that's what got them into owning their business. Where the others, they maybe have been really good about the widget that they created. And then sales has become a part of that. So I guess I'd like to start off, Jeremy, with you. Why do you think it's so important for us to really have the ability to sell in today's competitive environment?
Well, if you want to be successful, you have to. And I want to make sure that everybody understands, like, in our mind, selling is maybe defined differently than maybe what you've been trained or thought it was. Like, typically most salespeople have been forced to learn or to accept that selling is adversarial. Like you against the prospect, trying to manipulate them, win them over so you can make money. Okay, that's what average salespeople and business owners view sales as. That's why they stay average, okay? In our day and age, this is not 1983, right? We're not boiler room selling anymore. People have caught on to that. It's not consultative selling where they feel like they're being interrogated by an FBI agent, okay? So selling, if you want to be a top 1% company that scales to wherever you want to go, okay, is you have to understand that selling is collaborative. It's you working with your prospects to help them find and solve problems they didn't even know they had. And when you're able to do that, that gets them where they want to go. Okay. That's a win-win for both you, the company offering the solution, but more importantly, it's the win for your customer. Okay. That's what real sales is. Now, what does that mean? Now, there's obviously some skills that have to go in there. Okay. You have to learn the right questions to ask. You have to learn the right time to ask those. You have to learn the right tone, because there's certain parts of your sales process and certain questions you're asked that are going to be more of a curious tone. Like, Gary, can you walk me through how you guys get new leads and new clients? Let's say if I was selling lead generation or marketing, or as a marketing agency, that's just a random example. That's a curious tone. Now, especially in the beginning, it has to be more of a curious tone. Now, there's other parts of the conversation, and there's other questions you have to learn that require more of a skeptical tone, more challenging, but in a nice way. So how do we do that? And then there's other parts of the conversation. There's other questions you use that you're going to lean in more, and it's going to be more of a concern tone, a tone that, it shows more empathy. Okay. Did you notice how my voice fluctuated on those three things? So if we don't understand those skills, or if we have salespeople that are just out winging it, like personality selling, that's why you have no duplication, because most of your salespeople will never learn how to personality sell. They have no structure to follow. They're just winging it. And so as a business owner, you don't know what they're doing right or doing wrong, because you have no process that they're following. You just have a bunch of salespeople saying things. And then if you have a bad month, you don't know why. You don't know what they're messing up in. So that's in a nutshell, that's a little bit of reason. But let me go over one more thing, because I think I'm answering the question now. I'm coming back around. So the reason why we have to learn how to sell is because everything is sold today. Like, even if you're the business owner and you're not on sales calls, I hate to break it to you, you're still out every single day trying to persuade, trying to influence, and you're trying to move others, right? Because if you're the boss, or if you're the business owner and you're trying to get your employees or your salespeople to catch on to your vision of where you want to take your company, well, what are you doing? You're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence, you're trying to move others. I mean, it's on the flip side. If you're an employee trying to convince your boss to give you a pay raise, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence. I mean, I can keep going on. If you're an attorney trying to convince the jury that your client is innocent, well, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence. If you're a politician, everybody was fighting about politics, try to get people to vote for you. Hate to tell you, you're in sales, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence, you're trying to move others. If you're a stay-at-home parent who's trying to convince your kids to do their homework, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence. So everything is sold, right? I even call that non-sales selling, where you might not necessarily get paid a commission, but you're still trying to persuade, you're trying to move, you're trying to influence others. So it doesn't matter what you do. If you want to be good at anything, it's a skill you're going to have to acquire.
Yeah, I love how you set that up, because it's so true, Jeremy, is everything we do. I mean, if you're convincing to where you're going to go out to eat tonight and you have a specific place with your spouse, you're normally persuading, you're trying to get there. And so many people think sales is slimy. I think those days are over. And, like you said, that gets recognized out real quick.
And it really, and for the most part, it really is. I mean, I don't blame them for feeling that way, because the way it has been taught predominantly by most sales trainers, and it's not their fault. They just learned it from sales trainers before them, who learned it from sales trainers from the 50s before then, and then the 20s. And then, here we are. But I hate to break to everybody, like, we live in a completely different world now in 2023 than we even did in like 2008, 2010, especially with the rise of social media since like 2007, 9, 10 compared to now. I hate to tell everybody, your prospects that you're trying to talk to, they know everything about you. If they want to know anything about you before you even talk to them, they know about your company, they know about your products, your services, your price points, who your competitors are. I mean, they know everything about you by simply doing a Google search on their phone now, right? 20 years ago, they didn't even really have that power, right? I mean, like you're talking about like 20 years ago, before we really got into search engines, 20, 23 years ago. What was the bridge between a company and the consumer? It was you, the salesperson, right? Besides like TV commercials and radio and maybe newspaper ads or direct mail, customers didn't know about your products or services unless the salesperson educated them. But now, especially with the internet and social media, they know everything about you. So prospects, very few of them, especially if you're selling in more high-end stuff. I'm not talking about $5 magazine subscriptions, right? There's no risk there. So it's kind of like a yes or no quick. You can get away with that, okay? But professional salespeople, like real companies that sell like real products and services, okay? Even if it's a life insurance policy for $80 a month, that's a real product or service, right? So we have to understand that your prospects are no longer going to be pressured and manipulated because they know they have many choices to choose the exact same thing that you're offering them. So when you do that, it actually causes, when you use like traditional selling techniques and those type of things and consultate or repackaged as consultative selling, what it does to your prospect's brain is it causes them to emotionally shut down. And that's why they stay surface level with you. So even when you ask, you feel are good questions to help you find out more details, they never really open up. They just give you waffly answers or like generalized answers or 3 or 4 word answers. Do you know why they're doing that? It's not like they woke up in the morning and they're like, you know what, when I get on that sales call or when they come over to my house or, when that person cold calls me, after about 45 seconds, when they ask 3 or 4 questions, I'm going to go into fight or flight mode and try to get rid of them. It's not like they woke up thinking that. What causes that is the salesperson and what they're saying and the tone they're saying in it triggers that in the prospect's brain. That's called fight or flight mode. So once we learn how to eliminate that verbiage and change our tone, slow down our cadence, more collective confidence, there's a lot that goes into that. You're going to find your prospects become really open to you instead of trying to shut down. And that makes selling really easy when you're not competing against this like wall of resistance in the first 1 or 2 minutes of a conversation or sometimes sooner. Make sense?
Yeah, makes good sense. And I think it really sets up my next question I was going to ask you, because as I was doing some research on you, you have a unique method or process that you use called NEPQ. Can you kind of go over that and how it's different compared to kind of those traditional sales techniques that we've been talking about?
Yeah, a lot of people would say, a lot of clients would say that. So I'll do this. I'll set it up this way. Okay. So my background in college is behavioral science and human psychology. All right. Which is really the study of the brain and how human beings make decisions. Okay. So one of my professors, have you ever heard of Robert Cialdini?
Yes, I have.
So Robert Cialdini is the head of behavioral science and psychology down here at Arizona State University. Our headquarters are here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Okay. So you've read his books, Persuasion, Influence, some other stuff. So I had professors like him, okay, and others that I was studying that were basically telling me when I first got into sales as a 21-year-old broke kid, that the most persuasive way to communicate was here, if you guys can see my hand. Now, all these books that I was reading on sales and persuasion from what I call the old sales gurus, they were basically saying it was all the way over here. So I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like they're saying it's here. The sales trainers are saying it's here. The professors who understand how the brain makes decisions, they're saying it here. So I'm like, okay, how do I take this theory of behavioral science? Because there was really no sales process around it. And how do I wrap that into a sales process? Okay. And that's what I started to do. I started to learn how to use techniques that would work with human behavior, that actually cause my prospects to pull me in rather than me trying to push them forward. And overnight, selling became, well, pretty simple, like really, really quick and very, very profitable. So I'll go back to that. So according to behavioral science, there's 3 forms of persuasion, all right? And everybody on here, I suggest that you write these down, because once you understand where you are now in your current sales ability, even if you're already doing well, okay, or even if you're a business owner who did well in sales, maybe you made 6 figures, once you understand where you could be, it'll completely change everything for you. Okay, so the first mode of communication, I'm not going to give you the scientific term for it, but Gary, I'm going to ask you this question. If I said the words boiler room selling, what's the first image that comes to your mind right now?
Kind of just eggs boiling and hard coming at you.
No,
like
boiler room selling. Have you ever seen any movies on TV, like sales movies, where they're like in like a big like room and they're just all calling?
Yep. Kind of brings me back to the 80s movie. They're all smoking too and stuff.
Yeah, like okay. I've never heard somebody say boiling eggs. So yeah. Boiler room selling is kind of like the Gordon Gekko films or the Wolf on Wall Street films, right? Like, hey, I got a great opportunity, and we start pressuring and manipulating and pushing and telling them why we're the number one this and we have the best this, okay? But according to behavioral science, and once again, I'm just going off, not my opinion, I'm just going off what the data says. Data is a pesky little thing there, okay? So according to the data, we are the least persuasive when we tell people things, we attempt to dominate them or posture them or manipulate and push them into doing something we want them to do. Least persuasive. It's just like if you told your spouse, you're like, hey, you really, really need to do something, and then you keep pressuring and pushing them. Well, what do they typically do back? They push back. It's just human behavior 101. I'm not sure why we haven't caught up to, oh, like if I try to push and pressure people I know and they resist, and then I push and pressure people, prospects that don't even know me, well, they're probably going to resist even more, right? I don't know if anybody's ever caught on to that. It's like, to me, it's like, oh, that would make sense, right? So I'll give you a few different ways of the least persuasive way to sell. Okay, presenting. We've all been taught. Have to have an amazing presentation, show them our 60-minute slide decks. Here's our corporate office. Here's pictures of our founders. Here's pictures of all of our customer service awards. We have the best this, we have the best that, which, by the way, doesn't every single salesperson that's ever tried to sell you anything say they have the number one product or service, or they're the market leader, right? How many salespeople or companies say, yes, we're the 7th best in the market? Nobody, right? Okay, and I'm not saying you would say that, but what happens is when you say things like, we're the number one in the market, or we're the best this, or we're the number one, because your prospects hear that all the time from every single ad or commercial, or every single salesperson that's ever tried to sell them anything, do you really believe your prospects believe you when you say things like that? No. In fact, it actually causes them to trust you less, especially if you talk down about your competition. Why? Because they're used to every single salesperson who's ever tried to sell them anything from, let's say, lawn care services to a car, to a life insurance policy, to new kitchen cabinets, to, let's say, a medical device equipment, because they're a doctor saying that they have the number one thing, okay? So we sound like everybody else. And as a salesperson or business owner, you don't want to sound like everybody else, because that's when you get commoditized, okay? Here's a few more. Telling your story. Hate to tell you this, nobody cares about your story when you're selling one-to-one. Whose story do they mainly care about? Their story. Oh my gosh, giving a sales pitch. Got to give them a great pitch. Well, you can if you want to be enthusiastic and all excited when you give your pitch, but the data shows it actually causes more resistance than it does good. And I'll show you how to change that, all right? Putting sales pressure on them. See, that's a big one. There's a massive difference in getting the prospect to feel so much internal tension, okay, about their problems and their situation from your questioning ability, okay, and where they could be, compared to you putting external sales pressure trying to push them forward. Massive difference when you understand the difference in that, what I just said there, okay? And the big one, assuming the sale. I know people hate me when I say that, but according to the data, it's not very persuasive, especially if you're more of in a complex selling environment that requires more than one call or touch point, okay? So the bigger the sale, the bigger price of the sale, the more assumptive you are, the more resistance you're going to get. If you're selling $5 magazine subscriptions, you can probably get away with being a little bit more assumptive. Okay, but that's not the real world. All right, that's the first form. Scary. About 77% of all salespeople that sell anything are still selling that way, according to our data. It's scary. Now, the second, or some part of that, second form of communication is known as consultative selling. A lot of us have heard of that, right? Came out in the late 70s and 80s with like Sandler Institute, Spin Selling, that book, Neil Rackham, college professor, never sold anything, by the way, but they taught that you needed to ask more questions. And that was like revolutionary in the late 70s and 80s compared to boiler room selling. So you need to ask more questions to find out the needs of the client, the logical based questions. But the problem is when you only ask logical based questions to find the needs, what type of answers do your prospects give you back? Logical based surface level answers. And do human beings buy on logic or emotion? Emotion. Brain studies prove that. There's no debate among behavioral science at this point, okay? So it's more persuasive than, putting massive sales pressure or manipulating boiler room selling, but you're still having to play the numbers game because very little emotion is brought up by simply asking logical based questions. Okay, I'll give you a few examples. Like, you never want to ask these type of consultative questions. These are just generic, but John, can you tell me 2 problems that keep you awake at night? Don't ask that. Every prospect that they've heard that 5,000 times, especially if you sell B2B, even B2C a lot. Or who besides you would be involved in this decision? Okay, we might want to, most people aren't going to see that. Instead, you want to say, Sally, can you walk me through your company's decision-making process when it comes to solving challenges like this? Well, first of all, we have to talk with, it's more, can you walk me through? Okay, it's not so gruff. Okay, it's just a little bit of a tweak there. Or let's say in the first 5 minutes of a conversation, you say, what's your sort of budget do you have set aside for this? Well, the problem with that question, and I get why you want to find out if they have the funds before you waste your time. There's just better ways to ask that. But the problem in asking it that way, what's your budget for this sort of thing, and asking it in the first 5 or 10 minutes, is how can your prospect know what their real budget is when they don't even know what their real problems are when you first start talking to them? Okay, because by the time that first conversation gets over and you're able to help them find that not only they have the one problem they thought they had, but your questioning ability allows them to find that they have 2 or 3 or 4 other problems and issues they didn't know they had. Well, now what happens to the budget? Starts to get much bigger. So if you start off with what's your budget and they tell you a small number and then you help them find problems, now you're at a disadvantage. Okay, because how can they know what their budget is when they don't know what their real problems are when you first start talking to them? So that's the second mode. Now, the third mode, the most persuasive according to the data, is when you allow other people, other prospects, to persuade themselves. The term is dialogue. When we ask what are called neuro-emotional persuasion questions, like you asked, that stands for NEPQ. Okay, now, can you just show up and say, hey, John, go ahead and persuade yourself and we'll invoice you and just go ahead and pay because you persuaded yourself? No, that doesn't make any sense. You have to learn certain questions to ask. You have to learn when to ask those questions because there's a right time and a wrong time. Okay, sometimes you can ask some questions too early. That triggers resistance. And then what is the right tone when you ask those questions like I originally talked about? That's how you get people to move and pull you in. Does that answer your question? That's the long answer there.
Yes, it sure does. And there's so much to it. And, I think that's the challenge, is because for most people, we're doing the boiler room that you talked about, or consultative selling, and we're not digging into the problems. And a lot of research that I've done, that's what I'm seeing also in the marketplace. And you got to think, for a small business owner, a lot of them are not, and nobody's a natural salesperson. It's a learned process. Like
that's right. Yeah. You want to talk about that for a second? Because it's a myth. Like when people are like, oh, I just love when I hear this. They're like, oh, I just don't have the gift of the gab. I just wasn't born a natural born salesperson. I'm like, well, no, SHIT, Sherlock, no one is. That's like saying that people are born just natural at getting good at golf. That doesn't make any sense. Like Tiger Woods wasn't born out of his mother womb, was like, I'm just automatically, I have the right muscles in my elbow and like this right here. No, he had to learn the techniques, right? And the reason why he crushed everybody during his career and was ranked the #1 golfer is because he outlearned and outpracticed everybody else. That's why he became the best, period. That's the only reason. It's not like he was blessed from the golf gods, to have this golf ability. He just outlearned everybody else and outpracticed everybody else. And that's why he made all the money that nobody else made in his space. So nobody is born out of your mother's womb with advanced questioning skills. Anybody here born with advanced questioning skills? I don't think so. Nobody was born with advanced tonality skills. Nobody was born out of their mother's womb with advanced objection handling and objection prevention skills. Those are all acquired skills. Those are skills you learn if you want to be very, very successful as a business owner and as a sales team, 100%. They're all acquired. And that means anybody can do it.
Exactly.
Introvert, extrovert, ambivert. It doesn't matter what vert you are. You just learn the right skills and you can be successful. Doesn't matter.
Well, Jeremy, I really appreciate your time of sharing. And the one thing I think is you have a Facebook group that you're willing to share with our listeners and stuff. Can you share that information, how they can check that out?
Yeah, we got lots of Facebook groups, but let's have them go to this one. So this one has about 50-some thousand members in it. We started about a little bit over a year ago. It's growing fast. Lots of sales professionals, lots of small business owners, entrepreneurs. They're probably going to fit in there pretty good. Have them go to salesrevolution.pro. So we'll just have them go to salesrevolution.pro. And right when they join, have them check their messenger, Facebook Messenger. And we'll have somebody on my team message them over we'll give them like a free training called the NEPQ 101 mini course, just a list of some different questions they can ask for different situations. And we go live, myself and our sales trainers in that group, about 3 to 4 times a week, different Q&As, different little subject matters. We give them little nibbles, little hors d'oeuvres. And then if they want more like advanced training that our clients are in, just have them message us in that Facebook group. They can even message me, somebody will respond, and they can book some time with one of our team members and go over different training options that we have for their industry if they want to sell more and scale their business, for sure. But we'll give them a little hors d'oeuvres, little nibbles first.
Perfect. I appreciate you sharing that with the audience. And I really encourage people. We'll have it in our show notes. So I know most of our people are not sitting there ready to write that down. So don't worry. It's in show notes at smallbusinessanswerman.biz. We'll have it easily that you can access it. We'll also have their website, their information in there. But Jeremy, I just really appreciate your time of sharing those sales skills, because I know as business owners and entrepreneurs, even if they're not the one doing it, they're the one that needs to drive that in their business. And this year, with it being early in 2023, I really said this quarter, I wanted to find guests that help our customers maximize ultimately their profit in their company.
Well, and it's very true. And you hear a lot of economists talk about, oh, there's a recession coming, which, maybe there is. It looks like there is. But I remember when I was in the trenches when 2008, 2009, because it really happened in 2009 more. 2008 just barely started. It was mainly 2009 when just everything went rock bottom. But I remember the company I was in when everything went rock bottom, like half the salespeople, and there was probably like 400 in the company, like were gone 3 days later. And then everybody else in the company, like their pay went like by 50%. But yet I almost doubled my income that next year because I kept acquiring more sales skills. Okay. So it's easier to sell. This is my last piece of advice. It's easier to sell when the market's going good and the economy's going good, like it has been in the last 4 or 5, really 5, 6 years, really. I'd say the last 6 years. But when the economy starts to contract, like it's starting to do now, and everybody is starting to see that. Sometimes it takes months to do that. Every shortcoming in your sales ability will only be magnified by 10. because those easy lay down sales, they shrink up. They're gone. So every shortcoming you have when it was easier to sell that you got away with to close some deals, it just gets magnified by 10. And if you don't acquire more advanced skills, I can assure you, you won't stay at the same level you're at now. You will go far down. I saw it happen way too much with companies and salespeople that kept trying to sell the way they used to when the economy contracted. So you have to learn more advanced skills if you want to not only survive, but thrive in what's about to hit the fan here probably in the next year or two.
Well, Jeremy, I think he just shared his best business advice there. So I'm not going to ask you that question because that's it. Because if you're even thinking that, you need to change the skills that you have. So check out his website. We'll have all the information, show notes. Check out that Facebook page. Like he said, he'll give you that for free. There's 50,000 people in there. You'll get something out of it. And then if you want more, just message them and you'll be able to get more information.
Salesrevolution.pro. That's the best place for them to go if they want to start learning some stuff. All right, man. Hey, thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Jeremy, glad to have you. Now, Chargers, what I want you to do is take action, though. Let's improve these sales. Let's not talk about it. We had great conversation, but what are you going to do to change the direction for your company right now? So go get signed up on the Facebook page. Go through it yourself. Even if you say you're not the salesperson, go through it yourself so you know what's there, and then start working with your sales teams on improving their skills. And if you can't do that, then that's the reason I bring guests on like Jeremy. Now you've got a resource to be able to do it. Thanks for joining me this week, and let's make it a great day. Talk to you soon.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.